Let my daddy go free and I'll heal you.
Old, trembling, dying, and promising the impossible to a judge who hadn't walked in 3 years. Everyone laughed. Until they didn't. Welcome back, my beautiful family. Before we begin, please click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more thrilling stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get into the story. The courtroom felt like a tomb. Cold air whispered through the vents, carrying the smell of old wood polish and stale coffee, and the overhead lights cast everything in a harsh, colorless glow that made everyone look either guilty or exhausted. Robert Mitchell was both. He sat at the defendant's table, his calloused hands folded on the scarred wood, his shoulders hunched beneath a shirt he'd ironed 3 times that morning because he needed, to look respectable. Responsible. Like a man who deserved a second chance, even though they both knew he wasn't getting one. The gallery behind him was nearly empty. A few reporters slouched in the back row, bored, waiting for something worth typing. His neighbor Mrs. Chen sat 2 rows up, her weathered face creased with worry, a worn Bible clutched in her lap. That was it. No family. No character witnesses with polished testimonies. Just Robert and the crushing weight of what he'd done, and why. The prosecutor, a sharp-faced woman named Victoria Reese, stood at her podium like a predator that had already tasted blood. Her voice was clinical, efficient, as she recited the facts: breaking and entering. Theft of controlled substances. Violation of pharmacy regulations. Each charge dropped like a stone into still water, rippling outward, dragging Robert further under. Your Honor, Reese said, her tone suggesting this was all very routine, very open and shut. The defendant has admitted to every charge. There's no dispute about the facts. He broke into Westfield Pharmacy at 2 in the morning, disabled the alarm system, and stole over $300 worth of prescription asthma medication. This wasn't a crime of passion or confusion. It was premeditated, planned, executed with clear intent. Robert's lawyer, a tired public defender named Graham Pierce who smelled faintly of coffee and defeat, rose slowly. Your Honor, while my client doesn't dispute the charges, the circumstances. The circumstances, Reese interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass, don't change the law. Theft is theft, regardless of motivation. If we start making exceptions for every sympathetic story, we might as well not have laws at all. Judge Catherine Westbrook sat behind the bench, elevated, separate, untouchable. She was 42 but looked older, or maybe just harder, carved from something that couldn't bend anymore. Her black robes fell perfectly straight, her dark skin smooth and unlined except for the thin brackets around her mouth that spoke of years spent frowning at exactly this kind of case. Her natural hair was pulled back in an elegant twist, her posture rigid, her eyes, deep brown, almost black, revealing nothing. The wheelchair was visible only if you knew to look for it. The bench hid most of it, but Robert had seen her enter that morning, watched 2 bailiffs help position her behind the elevated desk, the chrome and leather of the medical-grade wheelchair glinting briefly before disappearing behind judicial oak. 3 years. That's what Mrs. Chen had whispered when Robert first asked. 3 years since the accident that had stolen Judge Westbrook's ability to walk, but not her ability to preside, to judge, to condemn. Mr. Pierce, the judge said, her voice steady, textured like expensive bourbon, I've read your brief. I understand your client is a single father. I understand his daughter is ill. I also understand that pharmacies have doors and locks for a reason, and that we have social services, emergency rooms, and legal channels for people in crisis. Robert felt something crack inside his chest. Not break, that had happened weeks ago, but fracture further, splinter deeper. Your Honor, my daughter, he started, rising without permission, the words spilling out before Pierce could stop him. Mr. Mitchell, sit down. The judge's voice didn't rise, didn't need to. It simply commanded, and Robert's legs obeyed before his brain caught up. You'll have an opportunity to speak before sentencing, Judge Westbrook continued, her fingers steepled on the desk before her. But let me be clear, your love for your child, however genuine, doesn't grant you permission to break the law. If it did, every parent would be a potential criminal, and the courtroom doors burst open. Not violently. Not dramatically. Just, opened. And through them walked, stumbled, really, a little girl who looked like she'd been assembled from pipe cleaners and hope. 5 years old, maybe 60 pounds soaking wet, with skin the color of warm honey and enormous green eyes that seemed too large for her thin face. Her hair was pulled back in 2 lopsided pigtails, one higher than the other, tied with rubber bands instead of proper holders. She wore a faded purple dress that had been washed so many times the fabric was nearly translucent, and pink sneakers with cartoon characters peeling off the sides. She was also dragging an oxygen tank behind her like a loyal dog. Daddy? Her voice was a reed, thin and wavering, pushed through lungs that had to fight for every breath. The plastic tubing ran from the tank to the cannula beneath her nose, and with each step the wheels of the tank scraped against the tile floor, a sound like nails on a chalkboard that made everyone in the courtroom wince. Robert shot to his feet, his chair clattering backward. Lily, baby, what are you, Mrs. Chen, I thought you were watching. I'm sorry. Mrs. Chen was already hurrying down the aisle, her face stricken. She was asleep, Robert, I swear she was asleep, and then I went to check on the soup pan. Bailiff, Judge Westbrook said sharply, and the uniformed officer near the door moved forward, but Lily was already past him, dragging her tank with a determination that seemed impossible for someone so small, so sick. Daddy, don't let them take you. Lily's voice cracked, dissolved into a coughing fit that bent her double. Robert lunged forward but Pierce grabbed his arm, held him back as Mrs. Chen reached Lily first, kneeling beside her, rubbing her back as the coughing subsided into wheezing gasps. The courtroom had gone silent. Even Reese, who moments ago had been cataloging Robert's crimes with surgical precision, stood frozen, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes, they flickered with something that might have been discomfort, or might have been pity. Mr. Mitchell, Judge Westbrook said, and her voice had changed, softened by a fraction of a degree that was somehow more terrible than her earlier coldness, your daughter needs to leave. This is not. Please. Lily pulled away from Mrs. Chen, and before anyone could stop her, she was moving again, dragging her oxygen tank toward the bench, toward the judge, her sneakers squeaking on the floor. Please don't send my daddy to jail. He's a good daddy. He's the best daddy. He only took the medicine because I was dying and we didn't have money and. Sweetheart. Judge Westbrook's mask cracked, just for a moment, and something human flickered behind it. I know this is hard. I know you love your father. But. I can heal you. The words dropped into the courtroom like stones into still water. Lily stood at the base of the judge's bench now, one hand clutching the handle of her oxygen tank, the other reaching up toward Judge Westbrook with fingers so thin they looked translucent in the harsh light. Her green eyes, fever-bright, luminous with desperation and something else, something indefinable, locked onto the judge's face. I can make you walk again, Lily said, and her voice didn't waver now, didn't crack. It rang clear as a bell through the silent courtroom. Let my daddy go free and I'll heal your legs. I promise. I can do it. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then someone in the gallery laughed. It started as a choked sound, quickly smothered, but it was enough. Like a match to kindling, the tension broke, and suddenly the whole room was shifting, reporters leaning forward with predatory interest, the bailiff exchanging glances with the court stenographer, Reese's mouth tightening into a line that suggested she'd just been handed an unexpected problem. Your Honor, Reese said carefully, I think we need to clear the courtroom, man. I'm not lying. Lily's voice rose, shrill with panic, and she started coughing again, her whole body convulsing with the effort of trying to breathe and speak at the same time. I can do it. I healed Mrs. Chen's back when she hurt it, and I helped Mr. Patterson's arm get better faster, and... Lily, stop. Robert had broken free from Pierce, was rushing toward his daughter, but Judge Westbrook raised one hand. "Mr. Mitchell. Stay where you are." The command in her voice froze him mid-step. Judge Westbrook was staring at Lily. Not with mockery, not with pity, but with something Robert couldn't quite name. Her dark eyes had gone very still, very focused, as if she were looking at something she couldn't quite believe but couldn't quite dismiss either. "You think you can heal me," the judge said slowly. Not a question. A statement, careful and measured. Lily nodded, her pigtails bouncing. "I know I can. I just need time. And you have to let my daddy go. That's the deal. That's how it works." "That's how it works," Judge Westbrook repeated, and now there was something in her voice, amusement, maybe, or wonder, or the exhausted recognition of someone who'd been offered hope so many times she'd stopped believing in it. She looked at Robert. At Graham Pierce. At Victoria Reese, whose expression suggested she was already calculating how to explain this in her report. Then back to Lily, who stood there wheezing softly, her hands still extended, her eyes never leaving the judge's face. "Your Honor," Reese said, her voice tight, "surely you're not actually considering." 30 days, Judge Westbrook said. The courtroom erupted. "What?" Reese's voice cut through the sudden babble. "Your Honor, you can't be serious." 30 days, the judge repeated, louder now, and her gavel came down once, sharp as a gunshot. "Sentencing is postponed for 30 days. Mr. Mitchell, you will remain free on your own recognizance during that time. No bail, no monitoring, provided you appear for the continuation of this hearing exactly 30 days from today." She turned her gaze to Lily, and something passed between them, something Robert couldn't see but could feel, like electricity in the air before a storm. "And you, young lady. You will have 30 days to prove your claim. If, at the end of that period, I am walking, truly walking, not with assistance, not with crutches or canes, then all charges against your father will be dismissed. If not—" She paused, let the silence stretch. "If not, Mr. Mitchell will be sentenced to the full extent the law allows. Do you understand?" Lily nodded solemnly. "I understand. 30 days. I'll make you walk, Judge Lady. I promise." "Your Honor, this is unprecedented." Reese was on her feet, her face flushed. "You're making a legal decision based on a child's fantasy." "I'm postponing sentencing," Judge Westbrook said calmly, "which is well within my discretion. Unless you'd like to file a motion with the appellate court, Ms. Reese, this matter is closed for now." Another crack of the gavel. "Court is adjourned. We'll reconvene in 30 days. She locked eyes with Robert one more time, and he saw something there that made his throat tighten, a warning, maybe, or a challenge, or just the weary acknowledgement of two people standing at the edge of an impossible cliff. "Don't make me regret this, Mr. Mitchell." Then the bailiffs were moving, helping will her back through the door behind the bench, and Robert was kneeling beside Lily, pulling her into his arms as she coughed into his shoulder, her small body shaking against his chest. "What did you do, baby?" he whispered. "What did you just do?" But Lily just smiled, a tired, triumphant smile that belonged on someone much older. "I saved you, Daddy," she said simply. "Now I just have to keep my promise." Outside the courthouse, the sun was shining, and Robert carried his daughter to Mrs. Chen's car, her oxygen tank bumping against his leg, and tried not to think about the fact that they had 30 days. 30 days before his daughter had to perform a miracle. Or they both lost everything. The apartment smelled like boiled chicken and desperation. Robert laid Lily on the worn couch, adjusting the pillows behind her head, checking the oxygen levels on her tank for the third time in as many minutes. The numbers glowed back at him, steady, adequate, but never quite enough. Never enough to let him breathe easy. "Daddy, stop fussing." Lily's voice was soft but firm, the way it got when she was trying to be brave for him. "I'm okay. Really. You collapsed in a courtroom, baby. You dragged yourself and your tank halfway across town because, he stopped, ran his hands through his hair, felt the tremor in his fingers that had been there since they'd left the courthouse. Why did you do that? Why would you promise something like that? Lily looked at him with those impossibly green eyes, and for a moment she seemed ancient, older than the peeling wallpaper and water-stained ceiling above them. Because you needed me to. The simplicity of it hit him like a fist to the chest. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway with a bowl of soup, steam rising in lazy spirals. Eat, little one. You need your strength if you're going to. She trailed off, glanced at Robert with an expression that said everything her words didn't. If you're going to perform a miracle. If you're going to save your father from prison. If you're going to somehow make a paralyzed judge walk again in 30 days. Lily took the soup obediently, sipping it slowly while Robert paced the narrow space between the couch and the kitchen table. 5 steps forward, 5 steps back. His mind was racing, cataloging everything that had just happened, everything that could go wrong, everything that probably would. Mrs. Chen, he said finally, stopping mid-pace. What did Lily mean in there? About healing your back? The older woman's face colored slightly. She busied herself adjusting Lily's blanket, not meeting his eyes. It was nothing. Just. Mrs. Chen. She sighed, settled into the armchair that had been old when Robert's mother was young. 2 months ago, I threw out my back moving boxes. Couldn't stand up straight for days. The pain was terrible, like someone was driving knives into my spine. She paused, her weathered fingers tracing the arm of the chair. Lily came over to visit. She was having a good day, not coughing much. She asked if she could touch my back, and I thought, well, what harm could it do? So I let her. And? Robert's voice was barely a whisper. And she put her little hands right where it hurt worst, and she just stood there. Didn't say anything, didn't do anything special. Just stood there for maybe 5 minutes, humming some song I didn't recognize. Mrs. Chen looked up finally, her eyes shining. The next morning, the pain was gone. Completely gone. I thought maybe it was just coincidence, you know. These things heal on their own sometimes. But my doctor, he was shocked. Said he'd never seen that kind of injury resolve so quickly. Robert stared at his daughter, who was focused intently on her soup, acting like she couldn't hear every word. Why didn't you tell me? You had enough to worry about, Mrs. Chen said gently. And I didn't want to. I don't know. Put ideas in anyone's head. But then there was Mr. Patterson down the hall. Broke his arm in June, remember? Lily visited him once, drew him a picture. His arm healed in half the expected time. The doctors called it remarkable. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. Robert sank onto the couch beside Lily, careful not to jostle her. Baby, is this true? Have you been healing people? Lily set down her soup bowl with exaggerated care. Sometimes. When they really need it. When they believe I can help. She looked up at him, and there was no childish pride in her expression, no desire for attention. Just quiet certainty. But it only works if they want to get better. Really, really want to. Some people, she paused, searching for words, some people hold on to their hurt because it's all they have left. And you think the judge wants to get better? I know she does. Lily's voice was absolute. I saw it in her eyes. She's tired of being broken. She just doesn't remember how to be whole anymore. Robert pulled his daughter close, felt her heart beating against his chest, too fast, always too fast, like a bird trapped in a cage. Lily, what if you can't do it? What if 30 days isn't enough? What if? Then you'll go to jail. She said it matter-of-factly, without drama. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the judge needs me as much as we need her. Mrs. Chen stood, began collecting the soup bowl. I should go. Let you both rest. But Robert, she paused at the door, her face serious. Whatever Lily can or can't do, that judge made a choice today. She gave you 30 days when she could have sent you away right then. Maybe think about why she'd do something like that. After she left, Robert sat in the gathering dusk with his daughter curled against him, her breathing slowly evening out as exhaustion claimed her. Through the thin walls, he could hear the Martinez family arguing, someone's television blaring a game show, the constant drip of the leaky faucet he kept meaning to fix. 30 days. He looked down at Lily's face, peaceful in sleep, the oxygen cannula making soft whistling sounds with each breath. She believed she could heal a paralyzed judge. She believed it with the absolute faith that only children possessed, the kind of faith that adults had long since traded for pragmatism and fear. And maybe, God help him, maybe he was starting to believe it too. Not because he understood how it could work. Not because it made any logical sense. But because in 5 years of watching his daughter fight for every breath, every moment, every small victory against a disease that should have killed her twice over, he'd learned one thing. Lily had never promised him anything she couldn't deliver. Not once. Robert pulled the blanket up over them both and closed his eyes, trying not to count the days already slipping away. 29 left. The knock came 3 days later, sharp and official, the kind that made Robert's stomach drop even before he opened the door. He'd been washing dishes, Lily napping on the couch with her oxygen tank purring softly beside her, and for one terrible moment he thought it was the police coming to tell him the judge had changed her mind, that the 30 days were revoked, that he needed to pack a bag for prison. Instead, it was a woman in a gray pantsuit holding a clipboard. Mr. Mitchell. I'm Janet Torres, court liaison. She had the practiced smile of someone who delivered bad news for a living. May I come in? Robert glanced back at Lily, still sleeping, then stepped onto the narrow landing, pulling the door mostly closed behind him. What's this about? Judge Westbrook's order. Torres consulted her clipboard, though Robert suspected she had it memorized. The 30-day postponement includes certain conditions. Given the unusual nature of the arrangement, the judge wants to ensure your daughter has actual opportunity to attempt her, intervention. Intervention, Robert repeated flatly. The judge has arranged for supervised visits. 3 times per week, 90 minutes each session, at locations of the judge's choosing. Your daughter will be permitted to spend time with Judge Westbrook, and at the end of the 30 days, an independent medical evaluation will determine whether any measurable improvement has occurred in the judge's condition. Robert's mind was reeling. The judge agreed to this? To actually spend time with Lily? The judge ordered it. Torres's expression suggested she found the whole thing as bizarre as he did. First session is tomorrow. 2 o'clock at Riverside Park, by the fountain. You'll accompany your daughter, of course, but you're expected to maintain appropriate distance. This isn't a social call, Mr. Mitchell. It's a legal arrangement. After Torres left, Robert stood on the landing for a long moment, staring at the peeling paint on the railing, trying to process what had just happened. Judge Catherine Westbrook, stern, inflexible, wheelchair-bound Judge Westbrook, had just arranged to spend hours every week with a 5-year-old girl who'd promised to heal her. Either she was calling Lily's bluff, or she was desperate enough to hope. Robert wasn't sure which possibility terrified him more. Inside, Lily was awake, sitting up with her coloring book spread across the coffee table. She looked up when he entered, and something in her expression said she already knew. Tomorrow? She asked simply. Tomorrow. 2 o'clock. How did you? I dreamed about her. Lily selected a green crayon, began carefully coloring what looked like a tree. She was in a room full of mirrors, but she couldn't see herself. Just the chair. Every mirror only showed the chair. The hair on Robert's arm stood up. That's just a dream, baby. Maybe. Lily didn't look up from her coloring. But I think she's more scared than we are. The next afternoon, Robert pushed Lily's wheelchair. They brought it for the longer distances, even though she hated using it, along the path toward Riverside Park's central fountain. The day was crisp, autumn beginning its slow burn, leaves just starting to turn gold at the edges. Families dotted the grass, children shrieking on playground equipment, couples walking dogs, the ordinary rhythm of lives that weren't held together by 30-day deadlines and impossible promises. Judge Westbrook was already there. She sat in her wheelchair near the fountain, positioned in a spot of dappled sunlight, her posture perfect despite the casual setting. She wore civilian clothes, dark slacks, a cream sweater, but somehow still radiated authority. A woman Robert didn't recognize stood nearby, tall and watchful. Security, probably, or maybe another court liaison making sure he didn't try anything stupid. Lily's face lit up when she saw the judge. "Hi, Judge Lady." Something flickered across Catherine Westbrook's face, surprise, maybe, or discomfort at the informal greeting. But she recovered quickly. "Hello, Lily. I see you brought your father." The lady with the clipboard said I had to. Lily was already wheeling herself forward, leaving Robert to follow with her oxygen tank. "But that's okay. Daddy worries if I go places without him." "Does he?" It wasn't a question. The judge's dark eyes tracked Robert as he approached, stopping at what he hoped was an appropriate distance. Close enough to intervene if Lily needed him, far enough to give them space. "Ms. Brennan will be nearby," the judge said, indicating the tall woman. "For propriety. But you and I, Lily, we're going to have a conversation. Just a conversation. No magic tricks, no theatrics. Understood?" Lily nodded solemnly. "I don't do magic tricks anyway. Magic isn't real." "Then what do you do?" "I help people remember." Lily wheeled herself closer, until she was right beside the judge's chair. "Can I hold your hand?" Catherine Westbrook hesitated. Robert saw the resistance in the set of her shoulders, the automatic withdrawal of someone who'd learned not to accept comfort or connection. But slowly, deliberately, she extended her right hand. Lily took it in both of hers, small, thin fingers wrapped around elegant, capable ones, and closed her eyes. "Your hands are sad," Lily said after a moment. "They remember dancing." The judge's breath caught, audible even over the splash of the fountain. "How did you?" she started, but Lily was already talking, her voice soft and dreamy. "You used to dance all the time. Before the accident. You loved it. Moving made you feel free, like nothing could hold you down or tell you what to do." Lily's eyes opened, found the judge's. "You miss it. More than walking. More than anything. You miss feeling free." Catherine Westbrook's face had gone very still, very pale. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "Who told you that?" "Your hands did," Lily said simply. "They remember, even if you try to forget." Robert watched a single tear track down Judge Catherine Westbrook's cheek before she wiped it away, quick and almost angry, like she could erase the moment of weakness as easily as moisture on skin. But Lily had seen it. And she smiled. The sessions became a rhythm. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. 2 o'clock, wherever Judge Westbrook designated. Sometimes the park, sometimes the courthouse garden, once the public library where Lily read picture books aloud while the judge sat beside her, silent and attentive as a statue learning to breathe. Robert watched from his designated distance, always close enough to see but far enough that he couldn't hear their conversations. He saw Lily's hands on the judge's arms, her small fingers tracing patterns he couldn't decipher. He saw the judge's face change, subtle shifts, like ice beginning to thaw in sunlight. Less rigid. Less distant. More human. By the second week, something had shifted. She felt something, Lily announced at dinner one night, spooning soup into her mouth between breaths from her oxygen cannula. In her left foot. Just a tingle, but she felt it, Daddy. She almost cried but she didn't want Ms. Brennan to see. Robert set down his fork. "Lily, are you sure?" The doctors said her spine was. The doctors don't know everything. Lily's voice held no arrogance, just certainty. Sometimes bodies remember things minds forget. Her legs aren't broken, Daddy. They're just sleeping really, really deep. And you're waking them up. I'm reminding her how. Lily coughed, hard enough that Robert reached for her inhaler, but she waved him off. It's not the same thing. That Friday, Robert arrived at the courthouse garden to find Judge Westbrook already there, positioned beneath an oak tree that rained golden leaves with every breeze. But something was different. The judge's face, usually so carefully composed, looked younger, almost vulnerable. Her eyes were bright, and when Lily wheeled up to her, Catherine Westbrook did something Robert had never seen before. She smiled. Not the tight, professional smile she probably gave witnesses and attorneys. A real smile, the kind that reached her eyes and changed her entire face, revealing the woman she must have been before the accident, before the wheelchair, before life taught her that hope was dangerous. I have news, the judge said, and her voice trembled slightly. Real news. Lily bounced in her wheelchair. You felt it again. In both feet this time. How do you? Catherine stopped, laughed, actually laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. Yes. Both feet. And this morning, when my physical therapist was doing the usual manipulations, I could feel pressure. Not pain, not just phantom sensations. Actual pressure. She didn't believe me at first, ran every test she could think of. The judge's hands gripped the arms of her wheelchair. Lily, something is happening. Something real. Robert felt his chest tighten. Hope was a dangerous thing, but watching it bloom on both their faces, his dying daughter and this broken judge, he couldn't help but feel it too. Can I try something? Lily asked. Anything. Lily maneuvered her wheelchair until she was directly in front of the judge, their knees almost touching. Then, with careful deliberation, she reached down and placed both hands on Catherine's legs, just above the knees. Close your eyes, Lily instructed. And remember. Not the accident. Not the hospital. Remember the last time you danced. Really danced. What song was playing? Catherine's eyes fluttered closed. At last, she whispered. Etta James. At my sister's wedding. I was wearing a blue dress and heels I could barely walk in, and I didn't care because, her voice caught. Because I was flying. You were free, Lily said softly. You were perfect. You were whole. You are whole, Judge Lady. You just forgot how to feel it. Robert watched, hardly breathing, as Lily's hands began to glow. No, not glow, that was impossible, it was just the afternoon sunlight catching her skin at an angle, it had to be, but the air around them seemed to shimmer, and Catherine Westbrook's face transformed, moving through expressions too fast to catalogue: surprise, wonder, disbelief, hope, fear, joy. I feel, the judge gasped. Oh God, I feel. Warmth, Lily finished. Like sunshine inside your bones. Like remembering you have a body that wants to move. That's good. That means you're waking up. When Lily finally lifted her hands, she was breathing hard, her oxygen tank hissing louder as if compensating for the exertion. Robert started forward, but Catherine held up one hand, stopping him. She's all right, the judge said, and her voice was different now, softer, protective. She just needs a moment. And then, while they all watched, Catherine Westbrook curled her toes. Not dramatically. Not with fanfare. Just a small movement, barely visible through her shoes, but unmistakable. Her toes. Moving. On command. For the first time in 3 years. Ms. Brennan, who'd been standing at her usual distance, made a sound like a strangled gasp. Catherine stared down at her feet, her hands shaking, tears streaming freely down her face now, unchecked and unashamed. Did you see that? She whispered. Did you all see that? I told you, Lily said, smiling despite her exhaustion. I told you they were just sleeping. Catherine looked up at Robert then, and the gratitude in her eyes was so raw, so overwhelming, that he had to look away. 14 days left, the judge said quietly. We have 14 days left. We won't need them all, Lily said confidently. You're already remembering how. But that night, when Robert carried his daughter to bed and listened to her labored breathing, watched her chest rise and fall with effort that seemed harder each day, he wondered, what happened when you gave everything you had to heal someone else? Who healed the healer? The call came at 2 a.m, jerking Robert from the first decent sleep he'd had in weeks. He fumbled for his phone, heart already racing, mind cataloging every terrible possibility before he even saw the screen. Unknown number. Mr. Mitchell. A woman's voice, clipped and professional despite the hour. This is Mercy General Hospital. Judge Catherine Westbrook has been in an accident. She's asking for your daughter. The world tilted sideways. Robert was moving before he finished processing the words, grabbing Lily's medication bag, wrapping her in a blanket, lifting her, still half asleep, into his arms along with her oxygen tank. Mrs. Chen appeared in the hallway in her bathrobe, drawn by the commotion, asking questions Robert couldn't answer because he didn't know anything except that the judge was hurt and they had to go, now, immediately. The hospital was a maze of antiseptic corridors and harsh overhead lights that made everyone look like ghosts. A nurse led them through the labyrinth to the ICU waiting room, where Ms. Brennan sat with her head in her hands, still wearing the clothes she'd had on that afternoon at their session. She looked up when they entered, and her face told Robert everything he needed to know. What happened? His voice came out steadier than he felt. After you left the park, the judge wanted to stay longer. She was, Ms. Brennan's voice cracked. She was so happy. Practically glowing. She wanted to wheel around the paths, feel the sun, be outside. I was following her, giving her space, and then, she pressed her palms against her eyes. A jogger wasn't watching where he was going. Headphones in, staring at his phone. He crashed into her wheelchair on one of the slopes. It tipped. She hit her head on the concrete. Hard. Lily had gone very still in Robert's arms. How bad, he asked, though he already knew. Could see it written in every line of Ms. Brennan's body. Severe concussion. Possible brain bleed. She's in a coma. Ms. Brennan finally met his eyes. They don't know if she'll wake up. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Robert felt Lily's small hand clutch his shirt, felt her trembling against him, heard the hitch in her breathing that meant she was trying very hard not to cry. I need to see her, Lily whispered. Sweetheart, I don't think they'll let. I need to see her. Lily's voice rose, dissolving into coughing that racked her small frame. Robert held her through it, rubbing her back, adjusting her oxygen, while Ms. Brennan watched with something like horror dawning on her face. She was getting better, Ms. Brennan said quietly. Because of your daughter. The doctors couldn't explain it, but she was getting better. And now, she stood abruptly. Wait here. She disappeared through a set of double doors marked ICU, authorized personnel only. Robert sank into one of the waiting room chairs, Lily curled in his lap, both of them breathing in tandem, his steady, hers labored. It's my fault, Lily whispered after a moment. Baby, no. I made her feel better. I made her want to stay outside longer. If I hadn't, if she'd just gone home. Lily Mitchell, you listen to me. Robert tilted her chin up, made her meet his eyes. Accidents happen. That's why they're called accidents. You gave her hope. You gave her joy. You can't take that back because something bad happened. But what if she dies, Daddy? What if I can't wake her up? The raw fear in her voice broke something in him. Then we'll deal with it. Together. Like we always do. Ms. Brennan reappeared with a doctor in tow, young, exhausted, with the kind of face that said he delivered too much bad news to too many families. "You're the Mitchell family." Robert nodded, standing with Lily in his arms. "I'm Dr. Patel. Judge Westbrook left explicit instructions weeks ago, apparently after your first session, that if anything happened to her, your daughter was to be permitted to visit. Given the unusual circumstances of your case, and the judge's specific directive." He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm going to allow it. 15 minutes. One parent can accompany her. But I need you to understand, the judge's condition is critical. She may not respond. She may not even be aware you're there." "She'll know," Lily said with absolute certainty. "She'll hear me." They followed Dr. Patel through the ICU doors into a world of beeping machines and hushed urgency. Other patients behind curtains, families keeping vigil, nurses moving with practiced efficiency through tragedy. Judge Catherine Westbrook's room was at the end, and through the window Robert could see her, smaller somehow, diminished without her robes and authority, just a woman hooked to machines that beeped out the rhythm of her struggling body. Tubes and wires everywhere. A ventilator breathing for her. Monitors tracking every function. Her head was bandaged, her face swollen and bruised, her hands, those elegant hands that had once sentenced criminals and signed orders, lying limp on the blanket. "Oh, Judge Lady," Lily breathed. "What did they do to you?" Dr. Patel opened the door, and Robert carried his daughter inside, setting her gently in the chair beside the bed. The machines seemed louder in here, more insistent, each beep a reminder of how fragile everything was, how quickly it could all fall apart. Lily reached out and took Catherine's hand, the same way she had that first day in the park. "I'm here," she said softly. "I'm here and I'm not leaving until you come back." The monitors beeped steadily, unchanging. But Lily closed her eyes and began to hum, the same tune Robert had heard her humming before, the one he'd never been able to place, and somewhere deep in the mechanical rhythm of the ICU, he could have sworn he heard an echo. The hours blurred together like watercolors in rain. Dr. Patel's 15 minutes stretched to 30, then an hour, then 2, because nobody had the heart to pull Lily away when she sat there so still, so focused, her small hands wrapped around the judge's limp fingers, her voice a constant whisper beneath the mechanical symphony of the ICU. Robert sat in the corner, watching his daughter pour everything she had into calling someone back from the edge of darkness. He saw the way Lily's breathing grew more labored as the night wore on, how her shoulders trembled with exhaustion, how the oxygen tank beside her chair seemed to work harder and harder to keep up with her body's demands. "Baby, you need to rest," he said finally, when the sky outside began to lighten with false dawn. "Just for a little while." "She's lost," Lily murmured, not looking away from Catherine's face. "She's in the dark place and she can't find her way out. She's scared, Daddy. So scared. Lily. I can see her." Lily's voice was distant, dreamy, like she was speaking from somewhere far away. "She's in a hallway with no doors. She keeps trying them all but they won't open. She thinks she's supposed to be somewhere but she can't remember where. She's forgetting who she is." The machines beeped steadily. Catherine's chest rose and fell with the ventilator's rhythm. Nothing changed, but Robert felt the hair on his arms stand up. "What do I do?" Lily asked, and for the first time since they'd arrived, she sounded like what she was, a 5-year-old girl, terrified and overwhelmed. "How do I bring her back?" Before Robert could answer, the door opened. He expected Dr. Patel, or a nurse come to finally enforce the time limit. Instead, Victoria Reese stood in the doorway, still in her prosecutor's suit despite the hour, her sharp features softened by something that looked almost like regret. "I heard what happened," she said quietly. "I came as soon as I could." Robert stood, instinctively moving between her and Lily. "What do you want?" "To help." Reese stepped into the room, her eyes finding Catherine's motionless form. "Judge Westbrook and we've worked together for 8 years. She's difficult, uncompromising, absolutely infuriating sometimes, but she's also the fairest person I've ever met. She didn't have to give you 30 days. She didn't have to believe in any of this. She gestured vaguely at Lily. But she did. And if there's anything I can do. You can talk to her, Lily interrupted. Tell her something only you would know. Something happy. She needs to remember she has people waiting for her. Reese looked startled, then moved to the opposite side of the bed. She stood there for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with the vulnerability, before reaching out to touch Catherine's arm. Remember the Jefferson case, she said, her voice rough. 3 years ago, right before your accident. That trafficking ring we'd been trying to break for months. You stayed up 3 nights straight reviewing evidence, finding the loopholes in their defense. We got all 17 convictions. You told me afterward that justice wasn't about winning, it was about making sure the right thing happened, even when it was hard. Reese's throat worked. You taught me that. You taught half the lawyers in this city that. So you don't get to disappear now, Catherine. You don't get to leave when there's still so much work to do. The machines beeped. The ventilator hissed. Nothing changed. Except. Lily gasped. She heard you. She's turning around. Wait, don't go that way, Judge Lady, that's the wrong, her hands tightened on Catherine's. Come toward the light. No, not that light, the warm one. The one that feels like sunshine and dancing and being free. What's she doing? Reese whispered to Robert. I don't know, he admitted. I stopped trying to understand weeks ago. Dr. Patel appeared in the doorway, flanked by 2 nurses. I'm sorry, but we really need to, he stopped, staring at the monitors. That's not possible. Catherine's heart rate had changed. Not dramatically, but noticeably. Faster, stronger, more erratic, like someone running. She's fighting, Lily said, her voice strained. She wants to come back but she doesn't remember how. She doesn't remember what she's coming back to. And then, so quietly Robert almost missed it, Lily began to sing. Not the humming from before. Actual words, in a voice that shouldn't have been able to sustain more than a few notes given her condition. At last, my love has come along, my lonely days are over. Catherine's fingers twitched. Everyone in the room froze. And life is like a song. Lily continued, tears streaming down her face now, her voice cracking but persistent. Oh yeah, at last. Catherine's eyes moved beneath their closed lids. Rapid, searching movements. The skies above are blue. Lily squeezed the judge's hand. Come on, Judge Lady. You know this one. You were dancing. Blue dress. Your sister's wedding. You were flying. Catherine Westbrook's eyes opened. Not slowly. Not gradually. They simply opened, dark and confused and very much alive, focusing first on the ceiling, then slowly tracking down to find Lily's face hovering above hers. She tried to speak, but the ventilator tube prevented it. Dr. Patel was already moving, calling orders to the nurses, checking monitors, but Catherine's hand, her hand squeezed Lily's fingers back. Once. Deliberately. A message that needed no words. I'm here. I came back. You found me. Lily collapsed forward, her small body finally surrendering to exhaustion, and Robert lunged to catch her before she hit the floor. Her oxygen tank had been beeping warnings for the last 5 minutes that he'd been too transfixed to notice. Her breathing was shallow, rapid, her lips slightly blue. I got her out, Lily whispered against his chest. I got her out of the dark place, Daddy. You did, baby. You did. Now let's take care of you. But as the nurses swarmed around Catherine, removing the ventilator tube, adjusting medications, documenting the impossible fact of her consciousness, Robert caught Victoria Reese's eye across the chaos. She was staring at Lily with an expression he'd never seen on the prosecutor's sharp features. wonder, and something that looked a lot like belief. Lily slept for 2 days straight. Robert kept vigil beside her hospital bed. They'd admitted her immediately after Catherine woke, her oxygen levels too low, her exhaustion too complete for them to send her home. The doctors ran tests, adjusted medications, spoke in hushed tones about cardiac strain and pulmonary stress, words that Robert had learned to translate into a simpler truth: his daughter was burning herself out saving other people. Mrs. Chen brought food he couldn't eat. Graham Pierce called twice to check in, his voice careful, like he was talking to someone standing on a ledge. Even Victoria Reese appeared on the second day with a stuffed rabbit that looked expensive and uncomfortable, setting it on Lily's bedside table without a word before leaving again. On the third morning, Lily's eyes fluttered open. "Daddy?" Robert was beside her instantly, taking her hand, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "I'm here, baby. Right here. Is she okay? The judge lady? She's awake. She's talking. They moved her out of the ICU yesterday." Robert's throat tightened. "She keeps asking about you." Lily smiled, tired but genuine. "Can I see her?" 20 minutes later, Robert was wheeling Lily down the corridor to Catherine's room, oxygen tank rattling behind them like a faithful dog. The judge had been moved to a private room on the 4th floor, away from the critical care unit, into a space that felt almost normal if you ignored the monitors and 4 stands. Catherine was sitting up in bed when they entered, her head still bandaged but her eyes clear and alert. When she saw Lily, something in her face crumpled and rebuilt itself in the space of a heartbeat. "You," she said, and her voice was rough from the ventilator tube but unmistakably hers. "You impossible, miraculous child." Lily wheeled herself closer. "You came back. Because you wouldn't let me go." Catherine reached out, and Lily took her hand. "I was so lost. I didn't even know I was lost. But I heard you singing, and she stopped, swallowed hard. I remembered why I wanted to come back." They sat in silence for a moment, just holding hands, two people who'd saved each other in ways that defied explanation. "Can you move your legs?" Lily asked finally. Catherine's expression flickered with something complicated, hope and fear tangled together. "I don't know. They haven't let me try yet. The concussion, they want to make sure everything else is stable first before they assess the paralysis." She paused. "I felt them before the accident. You know I did. But now, after the fall, after the coma." She trailed off, unable to finish. "It doesn't matter," Lily said firmly. "Your legs remember. They just need you to believe they remember. That's not how medicine works, sweetheart. Maybe not. But it's how healing works." Lily's green eyes were luminous, ancient. "You spent 3 years telling yourself you'd never walk again. Your body listened. Now you have to tell it something different. Just like that. Just like that." Dr. Patel chose that moment to enter, accompanied by a physical therapist whose name tag read Sandra Kim. They both looked surprised to find Lily there, but Dr. Patel recovered quickly. "I was actually coming to discuss exactly that," he said. "Judge Westbrook, your cognitive functions are excellent. No signs of permanent damage from the concussion. And your other vitals have stabilized remarkably well. I'd like to run some neurological tests on your lower extremities, see if—" "Do it now," Catherine interrupted. "With her here." She nodded toward Lily. "Whatever happens, I want her here." Sandra exchanged glances with Dr. Patel, who shrugged. "All right. Judge Westbrook, I'm going to touch different parts of your legs and feet. I need you to tell me if you feel anything. Pressure, temperature, pain, anything at all." Robert watched from the doorway as the therapist began her examination. He saw Catherine's face, the concentration, the desperate hope she was trying to hide, the fear that this time the miracle wouldn't hold. "Left ankle," Sandra said, applying pressure. "I feel it," Catherine whispered. "Not much, but I feel it. Right knee. Yes. Like pins and needles. Left foot, bottom of the heel. Pressure. Definite pressure. Sandra worked her way up both legs, documenting each response, her professional mask slipping slightly to reveal amazement. When she finished, she stepped back and looked at Dr. Patel. "There's sensation throughout," she said quietly. "Diminished in places, but present. This shouldn't be possible. The original scans showed complete severing of." "Can I try to move them?" Catherine interrupted. The room went silent. "I don't recommend," Dr. Patel started, but Catherine was already staring down at her legs, covered by the thin hospital blanket, her face set with the same determination Robert had seen in court when she made her unprecedented ruling. Lily scooted her wheelchair closer, reached out to touch Catherine's hand again. "Remember dancing," she whispered. "Remember being free." Catherine closed her eyes. Her brow furrowed with concentration. And then, her right leg moved. Not just a toe curl this time. The entire leg shifted beneath the blanket, bent slightly at the knee, a movement that was unmistakable, deliberate, impossible. Sandra made a sound like a strangled gasp. Dr. Patel grabbed the chart, started scribbling notes with shaking hands. Robert felt tears streaming down his face and didn't bother to wipe them away. Catherine opened her eyes, stared down at her legs like they belonged to someone else. Then she moved the left one. Then the right again. Small movements, weak and uncertain, but movements nonetheless. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Oh my God, You're healing," Lily said simply. "I told you. Your legs were just sleeping." Catherine looked up at Robert then, and the gratitude in her eyes was so overwhelming it felt like a physical weight. But there was something else there too, a question, maybe, or a realization. "How many days do we have left?" she asked. Robert had been counting obsessively, unable to help himself. 6. "We have 6 days until the hearing." Catherine nodded slowly, her hands still gripping Lily's. "Then we have work to do." "You need to rest," Dr. Patel protested. "Judge Westbrook, you suffered a severe head injury 3 days ago. You should not be." 6 days, Catherine repeated, her voice taking on the judge-like quality Robert recognized from court. "In 6 days, I'm either walking into that courtroom or I'm sentencing this man to prison. So yes, Dr. Patel, we have work to do." She looked at Lily, and something passed between them, understanding, determination, shared purpose. "Let's wake up these sleeping legs," Catherine said. And despite everything, the machines, the doctor's protests, the impossible odds, Robert found himself believing they actually could. The next 6 days unfolded like a fever dream. Catherine discharged herself from the hospital against medical advice, checked into a rehabilitation facility that specialized in spinal injuries, and demanded every available therapy session be scheduled back-to-back. Lily was there for all of it, wheeled in each morning by Robert, her oxygen tank a constant companion, her small hands guiding Catherine through exercises that looked less like physical therapy and more like a dance between faith and determination. "Push," Lily would say, her fingers resting lightly on Catherine's knee as the judge struggled to lift her leg against resistance bands. "Your muscles remember. They're just scared. Tell them it's okay to be strong again." And somehow, impossibly, it worked. By day 2, Catherine could stand with assistance, her legs trembling but holding weight. Sandra the physical therapist documented everything with the fervor of someone witnessing a medical miracle, filling notebooks with observations that would challenge every textbook she'd ever read. By day 4, Catherine took 3 steps using parallel bars, her face contorted with effort and streaming with tears, but her legs moving, actually moving, carrying her forward. By day 6, the morning of the hearing, Catherine Westbrook walked 20 feet with only a cane for support. Robert watched from the doorway of the therapy room, Lily dozing in her wheelchair beside him, exhausted from the constant sessions. He'd seen his daughter grow thinner over the past week, her breathing more labored, her skin taking on a translucent quality that terrified him. She was giving everything she had, and he didn't know how to make her stop. "That's enough for today," Sandra said, her voice gentle but firm. "Judge Westbrook, you've made incredible progress, but you need to save some energy for this afternoon." Catherine nodded, lowering herself carefully into her wheelchair. She still needed it for longer distances, for safety, but the fact that she could choose to sit rather than being forced to felt like its own kind of freedom. She wheeled over to where Robert stood, her eyes finding Lily's sleeping form. "How is she?" "Tired," Robert said, which was a monumental understatement. "The doctors want to admit her again after today. Her oxygen saturation keeps dropping." "After today," Catherine repeated quietly. "After I either dismiss the charges or send you to prison based on whether a 5-year-old girl managed to heal 3 years of paralysis in 30 days. "You can walk," Robert said. "Everyone saw it. That has to count for." "I can walk 20 feet with a cane," Catherine interrupted. "Our agreement was that I'd be walking, truly walking, without assistance. 20 feet isn't exactly walking into court." She paused, her hands gripping the arms of her wheelchair. "The truth is, I don't know if I can do it. Walk into that courtroom unassisted, I mean. What your daughter has accomplished is miraculous, but the law. The law is what you make it," Robert said, and he was surprised by the firmness in his own voice. "You gave us 30 days. You made that choice. Now you have to decide what justice actually looks like." Catherine studied him for a long moment. "You've changed. Watching your daughter perform miracles while slowly killing herself in the process tends to change a person." Something flickered across Catherine's face: pain, recognition, shared understanding. "She's not killing herself, Robert. She's teaching us how to live." The courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the unprecedented case, the paralyzed judge, the dying child, the 30-day miracle trial. Reporters lined the back rows, cameras clustered outside since they weren't permitted inside. Spectators filled every available seat, craning their necks to see when the judge would enter. Robert sat at the defendant's table with Graham Pierce, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Lily was beside him in her wheelchair, dressed in the same purple dress she'd worn 30 days ago, her oxygen tank positioned carefully at her side. She looked impossibly small beneath the high ceilings and wood paneling, but her green eyes were clear, focused, waiting. Victoria Reese stood at the prosecutor's table, but something about her posture had changed. She wasn't coiled to attack anymore. She looked almost uncertain. "All rise," the bailiff called, and the courtroom erupted into motion. The door behind the bench opened. And Judge Catherine Westbrook walked through it. Not in her wheelchair. Not with assistance from the bailiffs. Walking, on her own 2 legs, one hand gripping a polished wooden cane that matched her robes, each step careful but deliberate, real, undeniable. The courtroom exploded. People gasped, some cried, the reporters in the back started frantically typing on their phones despite the rules against it. The bailiff tried to restore order but his own voice was shaking, his eyes wet. Catherine made it to her chair behind the bench, a regular chair, not her wheelchair, and sat slowly, carefully, never breaking composure even though Robert could see the tremor in her hands. She lifted her gavel. Brought it down once. The room fell silent. "This court is now in session," Catherine said, her voice carrying through the packed courtroom with absolute authority. Her eyes found Lily's, held them for a long moment. "We are here for the sentencing of Robert Mitchell, who 30 days ago stood before this court having admitted to theft and breaking and entering. At that time, a rather unusual arrangement was proposed." Catherine paused, and Robert saw something flash across her face: vulnerability, gratitude, wonder, all carefully controlled but visible to anyone who knew to look. "I am going to say something I have never said in 20 years on the bench," Catherine continued. "I was wrong." The courtroom erupted again. Catherine's gavel came down 3 times before silence returned. I was wrong, she repeated, to reduce this case to simple matters of law and punishment. I was wrong to ignore the circumstances that drove a good man to desperate measures. I was wrong to forget that justice and mercy are not opposites, they are partners. She looked directly at Robert now. Mr. Mitchell, your crime was real. Your desperation was real. Your love for your daughter was real. And the fact that our system failed you so completely that theft seemed like your only option, that is also real, and it is something this court must acknowledge. Catherine shifted, and Robert saw her wince slightly as her legs adjusted to bearing weight they'd forgotten how to hold. 30 days ago, your daughter made me a promise. She said she would heal me if I let you go free. And what I learned over these past 30 days is that healing isn't just about walking. It's about remembering what it means to be human. To hope. To believe that miracles are possible when we choose love over fear. Lily was smiling now, that radiant smile that lit up her entire face despite the oxygen cannula and the exhaustion and the weight of what she'd accomplished. Therefore, Catherine said, her voice ringing clear through the silent courtroom, all charges against Robert Mitchell are hereby dismissed. Permanently and without prejudice. The gavel came down. And Robert Mitchell, who had spent 30 days watching his daughter save a broken judge one miracle at a time, finally let himself breathe. 6 months later, the same courtroom looked entirely different. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, warming the wood paneling that had always seemed so cold before. White roses and ivy draped the railings, transforming the space where judgment had once been passed into something softer, more hopeful. Chairs had been rearranged into neat rows facing the bench, which itself had been decorated with cream-colored ribbons and more flowers than Robert had ever seen in one place. He stood at the front in a suit Mrs. Chen had helped him pick out, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his tie for the 100th time. Graham Pierce stood beside him as best man, grinning like he'd won the case of his career, which, in a way, he had. "You ready for this?" Graham whispered. Robert looked at the assembled crowd, neighbors from his building, people from Lily's hospital, Sandra the physical therapist dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, Victoria Reese sitting in the third row looking uncomfortable in a dress instead of her usual courtroom armor. Even Dr. Patel had come, sitting with several nurses who'd cared for both Catherine and Lily during those impossible weeks. "I don't think anyone's ever ready for something like this," Robert admitted. The pianist Mrs. Chen had found began playing, and the courtroom doors opened. First came Lily. She walked slowly down the aisle, walked, not wheeled, scattering rose petals from a small basket. Her oxygen cannula was gone. The tank that had been her constant companion for 5 years sat unused in a closet at home, unnecessary now, a relic of a different life. She wore a pale pink dress that actually fit her properly, her hair done up in ringlets with real ribbon, and she moved with the careful deliberation of someone still getting used to breathing without mechanical assistance, but breathing nonetheless. The doctors called it spontaneous remission. Impossible, unexplainable, but documented in charts and scans that showed lungs that had been scarred and dying now clear and healthy. It had started the day after Catherine's sentencing, as if Lily's body had been holding on just long enough to finish what she'd started, and only then allowed itself to heal. Robert had stopped trying to understand it. Some miracles you just had to accept. Lily reached the front and took her position, beaming up at her father with pride that made his chest ache. Then the music changed, swelled, and everyone stood. Catherine Westbrook appeared in the doorway. She wore a cream-colored dress that flowed around her like water, her natural hair styled in elegant curls, her dark skin glowing against the pale fabric. No wheelchair. No cane. Just Catherine, walking steadily down the aisle of her own courtroom, transformed from judge to bride, from broken to whole. But it wasn't just the walking that made people gasp and whisper. It was the joy on her face, pure, unguarded, radiant. The woman who'd spent 3 years behind a bench learning to be untouchable had remembered how to be seen, how to be vulnerable, how to let people in. She reached Robert, and her eyes were shining with tears that she didn't bother hiding. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," he whispered back, and took her hands. It had started slowly, their relationship. Cautious conversations during Lily's therapy sessions, coffee after court appearances, long walks through the park where Catherine had first felt sensation return to her legs. Robert had been terrified, of crossing professional boundaries, of reading too much into kindness, of wanting something he had no right to want. But Catherine had been the one to say it first, 3 months after the charges were dismissed, sitting on his threadbare couch while Lily napped, "I think I'm falling in love with you." And Robert, who'd spent so many years believing he didn't deserve good things, had finally let himself believe he might. The ceremony was simple. Graham's cousin, a minister who looked delighted to be performing a wedding in a courtroom, spoke about second chances and chosen families and the kinds of miracles that happened when people were brave enough to hope. Victoria Reese did a reading, awkwardly, like she wasn't quite sure how she'd ended up there, but her voice was steady and sincere. When it came time for vows, Catherine spoke first. "Robert, 6 months ago you stood in this courtroom as a criminal. I sat behind that bench as a judge. And your daughter," her voice caught, her eyes finding Lily, "your impossible, miraculous daughter looked at both of us and saw something we couldn't see in ourselves. She saw people who needed healing. She saw people who needed each other." Catherine squeezed Robert's hands, tears streaming freely now. "You taught me that love is braver than fear. That sometimes the most just thing we can do is choose mercy. That walking again meant nothing if I was still trapped in my own isolation." She smiled through her tears. "I promised to spend every day remembering what your daughter taught me, that real miracles happen when we choose to believe in them. I promised to be your partner, your friend, your family. I promise to love you and Lily with everything I have, for as long as I live." Robert's own vows came out rough, choked with emotion. "Catherine, I broke the law because I was desperate and scared and out of options. You gave me 30 days when you could have given me 3 years in prison. You believed in something impossible because a 5-year-old girl asked you to. You changed everything." He glanced at Lily, who was watching with her hands clasped together, her smile wide enough to light the entire courtroom. "I promise to be worthy of that second chance. To be the kind of man who deserves the family we're building. To never stop being amazed that you chose us." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "To love you with the same fierce certainty that brought you back from that hospital bed and onto your own 2 feet." The minister pronounced them married, and when Robert kissed Catherine, the courtroom erupted in applause. Lily cheered so loudly that several people laughed, the sound echoing off the wood paneling and high ceilings, transforming the space completely. The reception was held in the courthouse garden where Catherine and Lily had spent so many of their sessions. Tables covered in white linens, food that Mrs. Chen and half the neighborhood had cooked, music playing from borrowed speakers. It was modest compared to what a judge could have afforded, but it was real, filled with people who'd witnessed the impossible and learned to believe. As the sun set and light strung through the trees began to glow, Robert found himself standing at the edge of the garden, watching Catherine dance with Lily. His wife, moved with careful grace, still mindful of legs that remembered trauma even as they learned to trust again. Lily twirled beneath Catherine's raised arm, giggling, her lungs pulling in air effortlessly, her body finally working the way it was meant to. "Quite a story," Victoria Reese said, appearing beside him with a glass of wine. She'd loosened up as the evening progressed, the sharp prosecutor giving way to something more human. "That's one word for it," Robert agreed. "I reviewed your case file last week," Reese said. "Professional curiosity. The pharmacy you stole from. They changed their policy. Now they have a fund for families in crisis. Several other pharmacies in the district followed suit." She paused. Judge Westbrook also pushed through a program connecting uninsured families with emergency medical resources. "It's named after Lily." Robert felt his throat tighten. "I didn't know. The Lily Mitchell Hope Initiative. It launched last month." Reese took a sip of her wine, her eyes on the dance floor. "Your daughter didn't just heal one paralyzed judge, Robert. She healed an entire system that had forgotten how to see people. Before Robert could respond, Lily was running toward him, running, an action that still seemed miraculous every time he saw it, her face flushed with joy. "Daddy! Daddy, come dance. Catherine says you promised her you'd dance at the wedding even though you're terrible at it." "I said no such thing," Catherine protested, walking up behind Lily with mock indignation. But her eyes were sparkling, and she extended her hand to Robert. "Though I may have mentioned that I'd like to dance with my husband." Robert let himself be pulled onto the makeshift dance floor as the music shifted to something slow and sweet, Etta James, at last, the song Catherine had told Lily about all those weeks ago in the park. They moved together carefully, learning each other's rhythm, Catherine's head resting against Robert's chest, Lily dancing beside them in her own private celebration. Around them, the garden was full of people who'd witnessed miracles and learned to create their own, Mrs. Chen slow dancing with her husband who'd flown in from Seattle, Dr. Patel laughing with Sandra about medical impossibilities, Graham Pierce attempting to teach Victoria Reese how to two-step. "What are you thinking?" Catherine murmured against Robert's shoulder. "That 6 months ago, I thought my life was ending," he said quietly. "That I'd lost everything. That there was no hope left. And now? Now I think maybe Lily was right. Maybe miracles happen when we're brave enough to believe in them." Catherine lifted her head, kissed him softly. "She usually is." As the song ended and another began, Lily tugged on both their hands. "Can we make a wish? All three of us together?" "What kind of wish?" Catherine asked. "A family wish. For all the other people who feel lost and broken. So they can find their own miracles too." Robert and Catherine exchanged glances, the wordless communication of people who'd found each other against impossible odds. Then they joined hands with Lily, forming a small circle on the dance floor while the party continued around them. "What should we wish for?" Robert asked. Lily closed her eyes, her small face serious with concentration. "I wish that everyone who thinks they're too broken to be fixed remembers that healing is real. That love is real. That miracles happen every single day if you're brave enough to see them." "That's a big wish," Catherine said softly. "Good," Lily said, opening her eyes. They were bright with certainty, with the same luminous faith that had brought a judge back from paralysis and a father back from despair. Big wishes are the only kind worth making. They stood there for a moment, father, daughter, wife, family, while the music played and the lights glowed and the garden filled with laughter. Around them, people who'd learned to believe in impossible things celebrated the ordinary miracle of choosing hope over fear, love over isolation, mercy over rigid law. And somewhere in the courthouse that had witnessed it all, the sentencing, the promise, the 30 days, the transformation, the walls themselves seemed to remember. This was where justice had learned to dance with compassion. Where a dying child had saved a broken judge. Where miracles had happened not because of magic, but because someone had been brave enough to believe they could. 6 months earlier, Robert Mitchell had been a criminal facing prison. Catherine Westbrook had been a judge who'd forgotten how to hope. Lily had been a dying girl with impossible promises. Now they were a family. And that, Robert thought as he pulled his wife and daughter close, watching the stars emerge above the courthouse garden, was the most impossible miracle of all. Sometimes the world broke you. Sometimes it stole your breath, your legs, your freedom, your hope. But sometimes, if you were very lucky, very brave, very willing to believe in 5-year-old girls who made impossible promises, sometimes the world gave you everything back. And taught you how to walk again. Not just with your legs. But with your heart. The music played on, and the Mitchell-Westbrook family danced beneath the stars, living proof that real miracles happened every day. You just had to be brave enough to believe in them.
Thank you for watching. Want to show me some love and keep the videos coming? Simple like and subscribe. Ready for the next thrill? Click on the video popping up on your screen right now and enjoy more. See you in the comments.